Week number 9 of the NFL season is officially here, so in today's video, I want to go through every single game of week number 9 and give my predictions for each game. But if you guys do go on to enjoy the video, make sure you guys hit the like and subscribe button, but let's go ahead and hop right into it. And we are going to begin with our Thursday Night Football matchup between the Houston Texans and the New York Jets. Now this game, in my opinion, is going to be a lot closer than a lot of people think it will be. For the Houston Texans, you're going to be without your two biggest weapons in Nico Collins and Stephon Diggs, so I expect a bunch of Joe Mixon in this game. If Joe Mixon can hold up and if he can be effective in those carries, then I think this Texans team will win this game quite easily. However, if they cannot get that run game going and if they can't get Tank Dell the ball effectively, I think this Texans offense could really struggle. Now, when it comes to the Jets side of things, I think this game is going to be really just about fixing any issues you've had the past couple weeks. Really, it's just simple mistakes. When the ball is in your hands, catch it. If you're going to kick a field goal, make sure you make the field goal. Don't throw interceptions, don't turn the ball over. And I think if the Jets do those things, they could have definitely a chance of winning this game, especially if they play good defense. But because this Jets team has not shown the ability to not make mistakes, and because I believe in CJ Stroud and Joe Mixon, I am going to go ahead and pick the Houston Texans to win 24-18. Then we move over to our noon games on Sunday with the New Orleans Saints and the Carolina Panthers. Now, we are not 1000% sure if Derek Carr is going to play. It does sound like it's leaning towards that way, so with this prediction, I will assume that Derek Carr is playing. However, if Derek Carr does not play, I don't really know if that changes my opinion too much, but I'll definitely maybe change my opinion if we get closer to that. So if there is an injury update and it's not with Derek Carr playing, I'll probably post something on my community tab or something along those lines. But again, if Derek Carr is playing, I think that fundamentally changes everything about this game. I'm assuming Bryce Young will be the starter again for the Carolina Panthers, and I honestly think he should be. I don't really know what to expect from this game. I expect New Orleans to play fine offensively. Hopefully they can get a little bit healthier in the offensive line and send some receivers, but the Saints team just has a bunch of issues right now, but this Panthers team just happens to be a whole lot worse. So with Derek Carr leading the way and Alvin Kamara being there, I think they can lead that offense to put up more numbers than the Carolina Panthers. I think the Saints soundly win 21-13. Next up, we have an NFC East rematch between the Washington Commanders and the New York Giants. Now, last time these two teams played, Jaden Daniels was not quite yet the Jaden Daniels that we know he is today. And for the New York Giants, I feel like they've gotten a little bit worse from what we saw earlier in the season. Early on, you saw a lot of really good things from Malik Neighbors. You saw Daniel Jones effectively moving the ball down the field, but in recent weeks, it just hasn't looked very good for this Giants team. As we all know, the Giants are just not a very good team. They're not really much of a competitive unit, but I will give them some credit. They do have some talent to make sure that the games don't get completely out of control, and that's kind of what I expect in this game as well. I think for Washington, just take care of business in this one. I want to see you look dominant against a bad Giants team. I want Jaden Daniels to, move the ball effectively. I want them to convert in the red zone. I want them to score touchdowns, not field goals in this game. And if they do those things, I think they'll soundly win this one against the New York Giants. For the Giants, obviously, you're just kind of fighting for draft stock right now. You're really trying to lose games to go out there and draft a quarterback. But if you're somebody like Daniel Jones, you're obviously fighting for your job. So for his sake, I hope he does have a good game. I just don't really see it happening, even though that Commanders defense isn't great. I think they'll handily win 28-17. Next up, we have an AFC East rematch between the Buffalo Bills and the Miami Dolphins. Now, last time we saw this game, the Buffalo Bills dominated most of it. And then, of course, the Tua Tagovailoa injury really put a damper on that one. And so hopefully in this game, we get a bit more of a competitive and healthy version of what we saw earlier. And I kind of do suspect that's what's going to happen. This Dolphins offense looked a lot better last week, but it still had some flaws going on with it. I think a lot of that was due to the rust of the quarterback. And with this Bills team, I feel like they're playing some really good football right now. So I kind of feel like this is a bad time for this Dolphins team to have this rematch with the Buffalo Bills. In a sense, this is kind of a do or die game for this Dolphins team. Right now, the Dolphins are currently 2-5, and if they were to lose this game, they would move to 2-6 and would essentially have to win out in order to make the playoffs. So for the Dolphins, you really have to win this game. It's just very unfortunate that I don't think that this team can actually beat that Buffalo Bills team. The Bills are playing some really good football. Josh Allen might be leading the way for the MVP race right now. I know the Bills haven't quite necessarily beaten any great teams, but I don't really think that the Dolphins are a great team. So I do think the Bills will win this one, but I think it will be a lot more competitive than what we saw last time. I have the final score being 31 Buffalo to 24 Miami. Next up, we have an AFC matchup between the Cleveland Browns and the LA Chargers. Now, I think this game is sneakily going to be really fun and really interesting. For the Browns, we saw them sort of rejuvenized last week with Jameis Winston leading the way. The offense was able to move the ball down the field, and I thought the defense played spectacular against a very, very, very good Ravens offense. Now, this Chargers team presents a whole lot of issues for this Browns team. The Chargers defense are one of the better defenses out there in the league, whereas the Ravens just aren't there right now. So when you're going up against a better defense, I do expect Jameis to have some turnovers and to have some issues moving the ball down the field. The big question for me with LA is, can they capitalize on those mistakes that Jameis Winston and that offense might make? And unfortunately, outside of just Justin Herbert, I don't know if this offense has the firepower to really do so. I will say Ladd McConkey has had a very solid season, but when you're going up against a really solid Browns secondary, I have a feeling that this Chargers team is really going to struggle offensively. And with that all said, I don't really know which offense will play better, but I suspect that both offenses won't play very well. I think it might just come down to which team can capitalize on mistakes and can capitalize on good field positioning. And I don't know why, I just kind of have this gut feeling that it's going to be the Cleveland Browns. Again, this Browns team just feels like they have some newfound energy within them. Jameis Winston has sort of made this team a brand new team, and with his aggressiveness and with his ability to move the ball down the field, I think that will open some things up for this Browns offense. Hopefully they can also get that run game going, and if they can do so, I think they'll ultimately win this game, maybe on like a last second drive or maybe a game-winning field goal. I think the final score will be 22-21. Next up, we have a game between the Tennessee Titans and the New England Patriots. Now, for both these teams, we really don't know who's going to be the starting quarterback. For Tennessee, it does seem like Will Levis will be back into the starting lineup, but at the same time, it very well could also be Mason Rudolph. And for this Patriots team, there hasn't been any indication of whether it's going to be Drake May coming back from injury or if it's going to be Jacoby Brissett. So I'm really just going at this game completely blind. Now, I will say if the Patriots do get Drake May back, then I think the Patriots will win this game. But if Jacoby Brissett is the starting quarterback, then I kind of do lean towards Tennessee. Now, Tennessee has been very, very bad this year. They've been bad offensively, and they've had some very bad defensive moments too. But I also think that that defense isn't as bad as maybe what last week indicated they actually were. I think this defense could really cause some issues if Jacoby Brissett is the starting quarterback. So I'm going to make two predictions here. I'm going to make one prediction if it's Jacoby Brissett starting for the Patriots, and I'll make another prediction if it's Drake May starting it, so you guys can just take that as you will. If Jacoby Brissett is the starting quarterback, then I think this team is really going to struggle to move the ball down the field for a number of reasons. Number one, Jacoby Brissett just doesn't present much of a playmaking ability that Drake May can often present. Drake May is a bit more aggressive. He's also a bit better of an athlete. He can move the ball better down the field as well. And I just don't think that Jacoby Brissett will be able to do those things if given the same situations that Drake May could. So because of that, if Jacoby Brissett is a starter, I'm going to pick the Tennessee Titans to win 17-14. However, if Drake May is a starting quarterback and if he is a full go, obviously that's going to open up a whole lot of more things for this offense. You get a guy who can spread the ball more evenly, can push the ball down the field, is also a better athlete, can use his legs, and is also going to open things up in the run game. So if you do get Drake May as a starting quarterback, I think the Patriots win this one 24-17. Moving on, we have the Dallas Cowboys versus the Atlanta Falcons. Now, the Dallas Cowboys are coming off I don't want to say good performance, but for what they've done this season, a better performance against the San Francisco 49ers last week. At least last week, we at least saw this Cowboys team put in some effort and actually look like they were actually kind of tough and ready for the moment. And then eventually the second half happened and they lost control and made a last second comeback, but ultimately fell short. And I feel like a lot of the issues that the Dallas Cowboys have both offensively and defensively can be exploited by this Atlanta Falcons team. For Atlanta, offensively, you have two running backs in Algier and Bijan Robinson that I think could just give this Cowboys defense a bunch of fits. And if this Cowboys defense isn't creating turnovers, which I don't think Kirk Cousins will give them many opportunities to do so, I kind of have a feeling that this Falcons offense is going to have a really nice day. And because the Cowboys are super one-dimensional on offense, you're going to be relying on Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, and Jake Ferguson a whole heck of a lot. And if you're the Falcons, you can really just key in on those guys and force Dak to be uncomfortable, force them to run the football. And because Dallas just can't do those things, I think Dallas offensively isn't going to have a good game, which they, by the way, haven't done all season. Now, the Cowboys are supposed to be getting Micah Parsons and Deron Bland back this week, which if both those things do happen, I think that does fundamentally make this Cowboys team a better team, but I don't think it changes the ultimate outcome of this game because I think the same principles that have been giving the Dallas Cowboys issues still apply in this game, so I'm going to pick the Atlanta Falcons 30-17. Moving on, we have an AFC clash between the Cincinnati Bengals and the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, the Bengals are coming off a pretty bad loss to the Philadelphia Eagles, whereas the Raiders have showed a little bit more life the past couple weeks. For the Raiders, I'm assuming that Gardner Minshew will be the starting quarterback for this team. I still feel like this Raiders team is unbelievably flawed on offense. They don't have a great offensive line. They don't have a great run game, and the receiving core is a little bit lackluster without Devontae Adams. And for the Bengals side of things, you still have Jamar Chase, you still have Joe Burrow. T. Higgins can hopefully go in this one, and your defense is performing at least a little bit better than what they were early on. I think personally this game is going to come down to which team just simply wants it more. I think Cincinnati is a team that needs to win this game if they want to keep their playoff hopes alive, whereas for the Raiders, they're honestly probably at this point tanking for a quarterback in next year's draft class. So I think the Bengals should be able to come out in this one, make enough plays, and ultimately win the game. Though I will say, I would honestly say that the Bengals might be on upset alert on this one because I can see Joe Burrow making a couple mistakes that the Raiders can capitalize on and make this game a little bit more interesting than it should be, but I'm going to stick with my guns here and pick the Cincinnati Bengals to win 22-14. Moving on, we have a matchup between the Denver Broncos and the Baltimore Ravens. For Baltimore, I want to see a big bounce back performance against what is a pretty good Broncos team, whereas for the Broncos, this is a good opportunity to look like you belong in this league. I would say thus far this season, they haven't really been tested all that much, and when they have been, I would say for the most part, they've done a pretty decent job of looking like they belong. Now you get a premier matchup against a very good Ravens team, and if you can slow them down and keep this game competitive throughout, I think that'll look very good for this Broncos team, especially with how young and how, future driven they are. If Bo Nix can look like he belongs and doesn't get too caught up in the moment, then it's a really good sign for what this Broncos team can potentially be in the future. I honestly do expect this game to be close for like the first 3 quarters, and then I think eventually Baltimore could put together like 2 or 3 drives that put this game away. But I think Denver's going to look good in this game. I don't think they're going to look incredible. I think they'll maybe have some bad moments offensively, and I don't think they'll be completely connected on the defensive side of things because the Ravens can just do that to opposing teams. But I do believe that at the end of the day, when we look back on this performance, we'll look back on it and be pretty proud of what the Broncos did against the Ravens because I think that they will keep it short for most of the game. I just think probably eventually by the end of it, the Ravens will put together some drives and ultimately win this game because they have more talent and they have the better quarterback. So I think the Ravens will win 31-16. Next, we have our first 3 o'clock game of the week between the Arizona Cardinals and the Chicago Bears. This game should be extremely interesting for a number of reasons. Number one, this Chicago Bears team is coming off a really tough loss last week on a Hail Mary saving play from Jaden Daniels. That's going to be a lot to overcome if you're this Bears team. So for their sake, I'm hopeful that they're actually going to be able to bounce back from it and, not overlook this Cardinals team because this Cardinals team is actually pretty good. For the Cardinals, hey, you're 4-4, and if you win this game, you're 5-4 and honestly really in a good position to potentially make the playoffs, which who would have thought the Cardinals would be in that situation 9 weeks into the season. Now, I will say Kyler Murray has been playing some really good football lately, but he's going up against a really good defense against the Chicago Bears, and I will say that I don't think Kyler Murray nor this offense has looked great against many of the good defenses they faced, but they've also held their own, so I think they'll do the same thing in this game. I don't think the offense will look great, but I do think this offense will look like they can hold their own. I think it's just going to come down to can this defense make some stops on Caleb, DeAndre, Keenan, and those guys. For the Bears, you're going up against a bad Cardinals defense, so I want to see this offense actually look good from start to finish. For Caleb, he hasn't quite yet been able to put together a full game of excellence. He's had some really good moments, some really good quarters, some really good halves, but I want to see him look good for an entire 4-quarter span, and in this game against the Arizona Cardinals, I think he's going to have an opportunity to do so. If they can stay healthy, if they can get these guys to move the ball down the field, and if they can put together a good game plan and keep their eyes focused on the ball here, I think the Bears should win this one pretty handily, but I do think the Arizona Cardinals will be able to keep this game very close because Kyler Murray is a good quarterback and this Cardinals team is just really solid. But with that all said, I am going to pick the Chicago Bears to win this one in a close game with the final score being 27-22. Moving on, we have another 3 o'clock matchup between the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, Philadelphia is coming off a very impressive victory against the Cincinnati Bengals, whereas for this Jacksonville team, they've definitely looked better the past couple weeks. It just hasn't resulted in too many W's. And to be honest with you, I kind of expect a little bit more of what we've seen from both these teams. For Philadelphia, I think you're going to have a couple possessions offensively that don't look pretty. Maybe there's a mistake, there's some drops, maybe there's some turnovers, there's some failed 4th downs. I think that will happen for Philadelphia offensively, but I also think they're going to be able to create plenty of explosive plays to Devontae and AJ and even Saquon. And I think they'll capitalize on those explosive plays by putting together long touchdown drives. I don't think it's going to be pretty, but when you're going up against a bad team like Jacksonville, sometimes you just want to pull off a victory against what is not a very good team. For Jacksonville, I think they'll keep this game competitive. They have been playing better football lately. They've been playing a little bit more inspired. Brian Thomas Jr. has looked really freaking awesome for this team. It just really comes down to the fact that you're just not as talented, nor are you as well coached as some of these opposing teams. In this game against Philadelphia, if this team can take advantage of the mistakes the Philadelphia Eagles do make, then maybe they could win this game, but I don't know if Philadelphia is going to make that many mistakes to allow the opposing team to win. So if they don't make the mistakes, I think Philadelphia will win this one pretty easily, but I do think it'll be relatively close. I have the final score being 24 Philadelphia to 21 Jacksonville. Next up, we have the LA Rams versus the Seattle Seahawks. Now, this is going to be a really big game for both these teams. For the LA Rams, you're coming off battle. I hope that DK Metcalf can go, and I hope that they can continue to get healthy, but I don't know. This is a tough game here against a team that is looking like a much improved team. The LA Rams, in my opinion, have a better offensive mind. They have a better quarterback. They also have better playmakers, at least right now, because of the injuries. This is also an LA Rams team that has a better offensive line and a better run game. Now, I think defensively, I think both these teams are pretty similar, but I would say that Seattle's a better defensive team because LA has got a bunch of issues right now defensively. Ultimately, this game just comes down to which quarterback do I trust most in a bigger, more pivotal game in the season, and I obviously trust Matthew Stafford more than Geno Smith, so I'm going to go ahead and pick the LA Rams here to beat a team in the Seattle Seahawks 30-20. Next up, we have our final 3 o'clock game, and a game that I'm a tad bit bummed out about because of the Jordan Love injury between the Detroit Lions and the Green Bay Packers. Now, as of when I'm making this video, it's not 100% confirmed that Jordan Love is going to miss the game, but I think we could all make a pretty strong assumption and assume that he isn't going to play in this game. With that said, Malik Willis has come in, and when he has played, has looked very good. But unfortunately for Malik, he's going up against arguably the best team in the NFL in the Detroit Lions. I think what's going to be a really pivotal part of this game that isn't going to get talked about too much is, can this Lions defense put pressure on Malik Willis? I think they're going to send a bunch of exotic blitzes, and I think they're going to try to get up in the space of that offensive line with some big boxes to force Malik Willis to throw the football. And because I don't really know if Malik Willis will be able to effectively move the ball down the field with his arm, I think that does play a little bit more advantageous for this Detroit Lions team. For Detroit, offensively, just play your brand of football. Run the ball effectively, pass the ball when need be to your big-time playmakers, make some big explosive runs, make some big explosive plays, and hey, if that special teams can perform like they did last week, this game is completely over. Whereas for Green Bay, they've got to get Josh Jacobs going. They got to do some underneath stuff. Malik Willis has got to play clean and effective, and if he can do so, I think this game could be interesting, but ultimately, because I think Detroit is going to be prepared for Malik Willis, I'm going to go ahead and pick the Detroit Lions to win 27-17. What should be a really good game, and also a very important game for the NFC playoffs and the NFC North division as a whole. And then we have our Sunday night football game between the Minnesota Vikings and the Indianapolis Colts. Now for Indianapolis, from what we have been told, it does look like Joe Flacco will be the starting quarterback for this team, at least for this week. Anthony Richardson, there's a lot of things going on with that situation. I can make a whole video about it, but I do think it was the right move, at least for this upcoming week. For Indianapolis, this is going to be a really tough matchup because Minnesota, despite the back-to-back losses, is a very good team and is easily one of the top contending teams in the NFC. Whereas for Indianapolis, they just haven't gotten going offensively. Now, I will say a big reason why they haven't been able to go offensively has been because of the play of Anthony Richardson. And with Joe Flacco, I feel like this offense could actually perform maybe a little bit better. I expect Joe Flacco to play well in this game. I think this one should be a very interesting game between two teams that honestly both need a win, especially the Minnesota Vikings, if they want to keep up in the NFC North. I think if you are Minnesota, you're probably going to be rooting for Green Bay to beat the Detroit Lions so that you potentially could win the division, but we'll have to wait and see. I do think Minnesota will find some ways to turn the ball over on Joe Flacco and, hold the time of possession and ultimately win this game. I think the final score will be 28-18. And then lastly, our Monday night football game between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Unfortunately, the Buccaneers are currently just a really injured team. They don't have their two best receivers, and it's really going to show up and hurt them in this game. I thought last week, despite going up against a really good Falcons team, I thought they held their own offensively, but unfortunately, they're going up against a Chiefs team that just happens to be maybe the best or second best team in the entire NFL, and definitely has one of the best defenses in the NFL. For Baker Mayfield, it is absolutely pivotal that they take care of the football and also just get the ball out to your playmakers at least as safe as you can. Unfortunately, there's not a bunch of playmakers in this game, at least available for this Buccaneers team, so I think that they should rely on guys like Rashad White, Bucky Irving, and Sean Tucker. I think they're going to have to run the ball effectively, and if they can do so, I think that this will be an interesting game. But ultimately, this Chiefs offense is a bit more of a clinic right now. Even if they have some turnovers, they just can make plays when they need to, and I think that they will ultimately be able to do so against this Buccaneers defense. For Tampa Bay, it is going to be pivotal for them to create some turnovers and capitalize on those turnovers. And if they can do that, this game again becomes pretty interesting, but it's just really hard to beat this Chiefs team. They're just a really complete roster with obviously a great quarterback and a great head coach. So I'm going to pick the Chiefs to win 24-20. Now, there were 2 bye weeks this week between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the San Francisco 49ers. So for both those teams, hope you guys have a good bye week. And lastly, before everything, I want to just recap everything with this little graphic here. As you can see, my current record for all my predictions this year is 75-48. Not terrible, but not perfect. So hopefully this week we have a nice set of predictions. And if you enjoyed the video, make sure you guys hit the like and subscribe button. And I love you guys. Peace.